Meet Johan Falk, a leader of the Exponential Roadmap Initiative, which outlines how to reach halve greenhouse gas emissions worldwide by 2030 and beyond. Johan also developed the 1.5 degrees Celsius Business Playbook, guiding companies to exponential climate strategy.
Hi Johan, great to have you back here on the stage. You have our full attention.
Hi, great to be here. Thank you. So, exponential development, as we all know, it is a big threat. Economical growth without limit at the expense of nature destruction. And lately, the virus doubling every other day, threatening life and wealth. But it is also, as Nigel said today, it is a big opportunity. Actually, we must utilize the opportunity of growing green exponential solutions to our advantage to stop global heating. So that's what I plan to talk about. And it's not only about the solutions, it's also about scaling climate actions from cities, from countries, from individuals, and from companies. I will talk about two big ideas, the Exponential Roadmap and the 1.5 Business Playbook. These two, they are developed under something called the Exponential Roadmap Initiative, which includes and gathers a number of entrepreneurs, researchers, NGOs, and leading companies with the same vision. And the idea is to build an ecosystem of actors driving exponential climate action and impact anchored in science. The starting point is what is required to stay below 2 degrees, aiming for 1.5 degrees. And according to science, we need to halve emissions every decade to reach around net zero by 2050. And this is what's called the global carbon law. It can be applied for companies, for countries, cities, and citizens. And this should be perceived as a global average. So the wealthiest should, of course, go faster. Both the countries as well as the companies. Net zero by 2050 is absolutely necessary, but we need now the laser focus on the immediate challenge, not the distant goal. And that's basically to halve emissions, to cut emissions by 50% by 2030. And that was the background for the Exponential Roadmap. The first Exponential Roadmap we launched at 2018 at the Global Climate Action Summit with Christiana, you heard it from yesterday, and Johan Rockström, who we will meet a bit later today. And we made a second update last year, and now a new release just last week. In this research, we combine and fuse research from different reports, such as drawdown we listened to today, the low energy demand scenario, CITRA emission gaps reports, and many others. And I would say that we managed to reach out pretty well and influenced the global narrative. The key question in the Exponential Roadmap is, do we have the solutions to halve emissions by 2030, and what is required to achieve it? And the conclusion from the work is that the solution to halve emissions by 2030 do exist in all sectors, going from energy to industry, buildings, transport, food, and nature-based solutions. And please read more about that in the Exponential Roadmap, which you can download, of course. So I don't want to go into too much details, taking the time into consideration. Now, what is really important is that we need to scale these solutions in parallel. That is the key, not sequentially. And also, mitigation is not sufficient. We need also to scale the carbon sinks, the natural the nature-based solution thinks exponentially at the same time, already from today. So, as we said, solutions exist in every sector, but they need to be scaled exponentially if we should be able to succeed. So the question is, do we have good examples of scaling already today? I would say yes. The first is, of course, renewable energy. It has been doubling about every third year, the last 10 years. So we are on a trajectory to halve emissions from electricity generation by 2030, of course, pending the right strategy and action. The second example is new sales of plug-in electrical vehicles, which also follow the traditional S-curve. Norway already reached about 60% of new sales, and Sweden around 30%. On a global level, if we keep a bit more than 30% growth, which is half the growth we've seen in the last years, we can reach 90% globally by 2030. And this is absolutely realistic in our view. However, to scale, all these solutions need to scale, and that requires acceleration from these four forces in parallel. We need a sharp policy, such as removing the fossil subsidizations, carbon tax, and stop date for fossil fuel burning. As we talked about this Monday, we need a finance shift from fossil-based business to green exponential solutions. We need to apply technologies such as digitalization specifically to accelerate these 36 solutions. And finally, of course, climate leadership. Climate leadership has to come from all of these four, of course, as we mentioned, and we need to reach a critical mass to achieve this virtuous circle of change where we positively impact the different actors faster and faster. What we concluded in the Exponential Roadmap work was that companies are, of course, absolutely critical if we should be able to succeed. And therefore, we kicked off the second project I will talk a little bit about, which was mentioned, the 1.5 Business Playbook, about 18 months ago. It is a sort of tool which is openly available for all companies to be aligned with the 1.5 climate ambition. And our goal will be to reach, with the ideas to reach millions of companies over time. It was launched this year in Davos with Christian and Johan, as you can see here. So what is it about? It's a short guide describing the essentials for companies to build a strategy aligned with 1.5 and also based on exponential thinking. A key idea is simplicity. We need to keep it as simple as possible for companies. But also the focus on speed, go from decision to action in less than 3 months. Importantly, anchored in science, in latest science. Also that it's aligned with the other frameworks, such as the Science-Based Target Initiative 1.5 and other key frameworks existing. It doesn't primarily focusing on target setting because the target is already set. The minimal trajectory is halving emissions every 10 years for every company. But it's focusing on strategy and action. So a guideline for strategy and action. And therefore also building this 4-pillar framework I will talk a little bit about. And that it's a wide collaboration between experts and different international organizations and businesses. So the 4 pillars, describes what is required for a company to align with the 1.5 ambition. The first pillar is simply about reducing your own emissions, your own operations, buildings, transportations, and so on, and at least halve emissions in 10 years, preferably much faster. And a lot of companies do that practically. The second pillar is about your value chain emissions. That's your upstream emissions from your suppliers and the emissions that your services and products cause downstream. And this requires that you work across the value chain and collaborate through the value chain to be able to achieve the same objective, which should also be at least halving in 10 years. The third is probably the most important. That is actually looking into your strategy and ensure that your business idea and value proposition is aligned with the 1.5 ambition. And starting to scaling the green solutions with low or zero carbon, so shift business focus if you're not already a completely green company. And it's also about integrate climate in your vision, mission, business strategy. And finally, companies can't do this on their own. They need to contribute to transformation in society, contribute through organizations and through working with roadmaps with other type of companies. It could be to help your employees or owners to halve their own emissions, as we talked about the other day, and also to influence policy, to help influence policy. So that's basically what it's all about. And we see a lot of this. We see a lot of companies joining this initiative now in high pace. And a lot of companies set much, much stronger targets than halving by 2030. So that should be perceived as a minimal. And the key point is, of course, to get the critical mass of companies with very sharp strategies leading in the future. Yeah, a few words on the pillar 3, of course. That is to develop green business ideas and ensure that you transform your value proposition so it's aligned with the future. Well, if you're working in energy, it's about renewables, of course. And we see a lot of projects, as you can see here, which is actually making dramatic cuts. We're talking about 10x solutions where you can basically cut massive amounts of emissions. But what is also very important is that you cannot just drive your business development based on cutting emissions. These solutions has to be better than the old solutions from a value perspective, of course. And this very often go hand in hand, as we know. Enabling solutions is also very important, and specifically digitalization. We see that digitalization can maybe contribute with 15% of the cuts, according to some estimates, up to 2030. That's basically by applying artificial intelligence, cloud technology, and mobile communications and Internet of Things in all these sectors in order to drive the halving. And everything from agriculture to traveling to sharing to driving the circular economy and also achieving full transparency in the value chain. So it's incredibly important that the digital sector has a compass to save the climate, also as part of their vision and mission statement. So, to summarize, we need to utilize exponentials to our advantage. We need to focus on halving emissions by 2030, and we need to drive the green solutions exponentially. And please join us in this initiative. Thank you.